And here's TechDweeb coming round the bend. Look how fast he's going. He takes the corner like a pro. I bet all the girls watching want to be his girlfriend. He's speeding down the track. Wow, I've never seen a car drive so fast. No one can catch him, including girls who want to date him. He bobs and weaves his way through the swerve. He drifts around the big curve, speeds along the straightaway, across the finish line. TechDweeb wins. The crowd goes wild, especially the girls. He's definitely gonna probably get a girlfriend now. Hey there, how's it going? I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. To be honest, I am not a huge racing game guy. I don't play modern racing games very often. I tried to get into the Forza Horizon series, but I just ended up doing donuts through fences while the game constantly gave me style points and told me how awesome I was. And most realistic modern racing games are too realistic for me. I can't handle needing to drive like an adult. But I have a soft spot for retro racing games. These games understand me. They don't care about open world thrills or realistic engine tuning or whatever. They just hand me a tiny pixel car, plop me down on a faux 3D pixel track, point me towards a pixel finish line, and let me drive like a cool guy instead of a dweeb. That's my kind of racing. And if there's one system that absolutely crushes it when it comes to retro racing games, it's the Game Boy Advance. I've said it before and I'll say it again here, why not? The GBA is my favorite classic retro system. It exists in this weird magical sweet spot in gaming history. It launched during the GameCube era, when developers had already spent decades figuring out how to make really good games, but the GBA's hardware is firmly rooted in the classic whatever-bit retro pixel era. And nowhere is that more apparent than in racing games, simply because racing games needed to feel fluid with good frame rates and to achieve a sort of 3D effect so you could see the track in front of you, but somehow work on weaker hardware. These racers on the GBA aren't just technical showcases. They're absolute fun as heck bangers that still feel just as tight as their console big brothers. And I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna show you 7 very cool and impressive and fun racing games for the Game Boy Advance. The kind of games that make you sit back and think, wow, maybe I should have spent less time playing racing games and making YouTube videos about them and more time learning how to talk to girls. Starting off with one of my favorite games on this list, V-Rally 3. This was the game that made me want to explore the library of racing games on the GBA. I felt like if this was possible, surely other racing games would have pushed boundaries too. And yeah, they did, as you'll see. V-Rally is a console racing game series. It's actually a spin-off of the Need for Speed franchise. And V-Rally 3 launched on the PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and our little purple buddy, the Game Boy Advance. But here's the thing, the GBA version is the most impressive of the bunch. The console versions are fine, but the GBA version feels like wizardry. This game feels so much more advanced than the kind of game you'd expect to see running on the GBA. The roads twist through forests, snow, dirt, and gravel. The cars are detailed, the environments have variety, and they're all rendered in full 3D. Great sense of speed. You can play first or third person, and somehow it all runs smoothly. But the graphics are only part of the story. The other part is the driving. This game manages to feel realistic despite the limitations of the GBA. Different surfaces feel different, cars slide and drift in ways that make sense. You can throw your car into a corner, wrestle it back under control, and feel like a rally hero even though you're actually a grown adult sitting on a couch making race car noises with your mouth. Also, there's a full career mode. You sign contracts, earn money, repair damage, tweak your car, and gradually work your way up through the ranks. This isn't just an arcade racer where you blast through a few tracks and call it a day. It feels like a full console rally game squeezed into a tiny handheld. The only downside is that it can be a little unforgiving at first. The handling takes some practice, and if you're expecting Mario Kart, you'll probably end up introducing your car to several innocent trees. You can't talk about racing games on the GBA without talking about Mario Kart Super Circuit. Well, I mean you could, but you'd have a comment section full of, hey, what about Mario Kart Super Circuit? And it's just probably not worth it. Which brings us to Mario Kart Super Circuit. And this is a weird one because when it came out, people thought it was pretty good, but not exactly mind-blowing. The world was charging headfirst into the 3D era. We already had Mario Kart 64, Double Dash was on the horizon. Compared to all that, this chunky little sprite-based kart racer felt a bit old-fashioned. But here's the thing, time has been incredibly kind to Super Circuit. In fact, I'm just gonna say it, this is my favorite retro Mario Kart game. Part of that is because it feels like the perfect middle ground between the Super Nintendo original and the games that came after it. It still has some of that classic slippery handling and chaotic energy from Super Mario Kart, but it feels more polished and approachable. The controls are fantastic. The drifting feels great once you learn it, and the tracks are super creative. They worked magic within the limitations of the GBA. And speaking of tracks, there are a lot of them. Not only do you get an entire set of brand new courses, but Nintendo also introduced every track from the original Super Mario Kart as unlockable content. 40 tracks total. That's a ridiculous amount of content for a handheld game in 2001. I don't think I had 40 thoughts in my head in 2001. The visuals have aged beautifully too. The bright colors and expressive character sprites and pseudo Mode 7 track effects give the game a timeless look. Back then, Mario Kart 64 probably looked more impressive, but today, honestly, I'd rather look at Super Circuit. It has charm, it has personality, it looks like a video game, and I mean that as a compliment. Apparently, the multiplayer was also fantastic if you had link cables. And friends, I had neither. This is Motoracer Advance, a motocross game. There are lots of retro motocross games, but this one stands out for quite a few reasons. First, the most obvious thing is the draw distance. Lots of retro racers have tight draw distances, just enough so you can see the next corner and maybe whatever unfortunate tree you're about to drive into. But Motoracer Advance renders the track way off into the distance. You crest a hill and you can see the road winding through the landscape ahead of you. Until you get used to it, it looks wrong. Like somebody accidentally gave the GBA more horsepower than it was supposed to have. The tracks aren't boring either. They're packed with stuff. Rivers, buildings, cars, wildlife. It's one of the few GBA racers that actually feels like you're driving through a place, instead of a series of disconnected track sprites floating in the void. And despite how impressive these graphical tricks are, the game runs silky smooth. Not just in the frame rate, but also in how tight and responsive it is. The bike feels incredibly reactive. Every turn, every drift, every panic-induced correction after you realize you're heading directly towards a fence feels immediate. There's a few different modes too, each with maps that all feel unique. It's not just impressive from a technical standpoint. It's also impressive because it's fun as heck. I had no idea this game existed until I started exploring the GBA racing game library, and it instantly got added to my favorites list, and I'm definitely going to play this one often. As I explore a system's library while making videos like this, I occasionally stumble across a game that makes me wonder how many other hidden gems I've completely ignored. Racing Gears Advance is one of those games. I passed by this countless times without giving it a second thought, which was a huge mistake. The kind of mistake that would get me fired if anyone was actually paying me to be an expert on obscure GBA racing games. Which is kinda you, I guess. You're watching this video, so you're basically my boss. Please don't fire me. I'll do better, I swear. Most GBA racers use a behind-the-car viewpoint. Racing Gears goes full arcade mode with an isometric camera instead, giving it a totally different feel. It reminds me of like RC Pro-Am and Super Off-Road and Rock and Roll Racing. You know, the kind of game this is, and it's a good one of those. The controls are simple, you're just kind of gassing and braking and power sliding, but the racing itself has plenty of depth. The tracks are packed with shortcuts and hazards and alternate routes and toys to play with like oil slicks, smoke screens, nitro boosts, and landmines. I also appreciate that the game doesn't rely on rubber band AI nonsense. If the computer beats you, it's usually because it drove better than you, which is frustrating but in a respectful kind of way. Like when I need to ask my mom to open the pickles. There's a nice sense of progression too. Winning races earns money for upgrades, equipment, tires, weapons, and other improvements. It's the kind of system that constantly gives you something to work towards. Racing Gears Advance isn't famous. It doesn't have a big franchise attached to it. It doesn't have the kind of name that shows up on Best of the GBA lists. It just quietly sits there, being excellent. There are several GT Advance games on the GBA, and they're all pretty good, but the third is the one that I'm showing you in this video. Each one has a different vibe. The first game was all about street racing, the second went off into the dirt with rally racing. GT Advance 3 takes the best bits of both and mixes them together into something similar but different, like a wedding cake filled with maple beans. At first glance, it looks like a pretty serious racing game. Licensed cars, tuning options, championship modes, the sort of stuff that makes me worry I'm biting off more maple bean wedding cake than I can chew. Thankfully, GT Advance 3 never gets too deep. It's mostly about the racing, which is good because that's the part of racing games I like. One thing that makes this game stand out is the handling. It really wants you to slide. Long drifts, power slides, and controlled fishtails are a huge part of the experience. You're constantly battling control and fun drifty nonsense, and it's a much more exciting game because of it. The tracks are great too. Hairpins, sweeping bends, nighttime races, rainy conditions. There's plenty of variety, and the game keeps introducing new challenges without feeling unfair. There's also a strong sense of progression. There's nearly 100 licensed cars to unlock, which is ridiculous for a GBA racing game. Every victory earns you something new, whether that's a car, an upgrade, or access to new events. GT Advance 3 isn't the flashiest racer on the GBA, and it isn't the most famous. But if you like unlocking cars and tuning them up and power sliding around corners like you got something to prove, this game you can do all that stuff in this game. Konami Krazy Kart Racers is one of those games that sounds fake when you first hear about it, like somebody's making a parody of a game. Think Mario Kart, but with Konami mascots crammed into tiny go-karts. It feels like a random smattering of characters from different franchises. It is that, and it feels like that. Goemon is here, Dracula's here, Twinbee is here, the Gradius Moai statue's here for some reason. Konami had access to decades of iconic characters, and they go deciding that a giant stone head deserved a kart more than Simon Belmont. How does that make any sense? The obvious thing to get out of the way is that, yes, this is absolutely a Mario Kart clone. Konami saw Mario Kart was popular, they saw that the GBA launched without a Mario Kart game, and decided to slide into that empty parking space before Nintendo got there. And honestly, they did a pretty good job. It's a good kart racer. The controls feel great, the racing is fast, and the full screen Mode 7 style graphics were seriously impressive for such an early GBA release. This was one of the first games on the system showing people what the hardware could do, and even today it's still a nice looking game. Bright colors and chunky sprites and smooth scaling effects and plenty of personality. The item system is a little different from Mario Kart. Instead of relying entirely on random luck, you collect different colored bells. Blue bells always give you a speed boost, while red bells give you an offensive item. The biggest weakness is that it's not Mario Kart. It never quite escapes Mario Kart's shadow. The whole game feels like it's more of like a cover song of a good song, instead of writing its own song. But honestly, that's okay. Cover songs are good too. If you enjoy kart racing games and you want another one, this is one. And of course, no GBA racing games video would be complete without showcasing at least one of the 3 F-Zero games that we got on the system. 3! We were eating good back then. Eating F-Zero games. Today I want to focus on the first one, F-Zero Maximum Velocity. The other two are great in their own ways, but Maximum Velocity fits this video best because it's the most old school of the bunch. It's the closest in spirit to the Super Nintendo original. No anime tie-ins, no story mode, no distractions, just tiny futuristic death rockets traveling at speeds that would make a dweeb run home crying to his mama. Which totally didn't happen despite whatever rumors you've heard. And holy jeez, does this game feel fast? Yes, it does. That's really the whole appeal of F-Zero, isn't it? Speed. Not pretend speed. Not the background is moving quickly speed. Actual speed. The kind of speed where your brain starts buffering halfway through a corner and your thumbs have to finish the race on their own. The tracks are fantastic too. Twisting magnetic highways, industrial zones packed with hazards, giant sweeping corners, brutal hairpins, and enough boost pads to briefly convince you that you're cool. Until you hit a wall, and then remember you're not. One thing I really love about Maximum Velocity is how demanding it is. Winning requires learning the tracks, managing your boost meter. If you lose, it's usually because you made a mistake, which is why I'm such a loser. Not in real life, in the game. I'm a loser in real life for completely different reasons. And that's it. That's all I have to share with you today. 7 amazing GBA racers that I think are pretty swell, and you should play if you want to. However, I've only scratched the surface. There are a ton more GBA racers that didn't make the cut for this video. I could easily make 2 or 3 more videos like this on GBA racers. So stay tuned for a follow-up video. I'll probably do a follow-up. Don't hold me to it, but do let me know if you actually want that. And also, if you have GBA racing games that you love that I didn't talk about, let me know what they are. I promise I'll play every game you suggest and make vroom vroom mouth noises while I do. But that'll do it for me for today. I'm TechDweeb, thanks for watching, bye bye.